Hey, courageous ones. I want to share with you today about my burnout story. In the last video, I mentioned that I was going to create a video to share my burnout. So I just want to dive right in. I'm also going to be reading from my notes because I don't have all of this memorized and I'm a little new to presenting in such a format. So please bear with. I feel like it's the right thing to do to share with you a little bit about my experience of burnout. I really hope that it finds the right audience so it can be helpful and offer something useful. I actually don't feel great about admitting to having burnout. In deciding to share, I'm definitely pushing myself to be open about something that I'm working to accept. I didn't even feel safe or very good to share this with very many people, and especially like my colleagues at work, because I do feel some shame about it. The thing is that I've come to know that I have a highly sensitive nervous system and I'm a highly sensitive person. And it's also known as HSP. So I figure if I myself, who is very open-minded and not very judgmental most of the time, I have difficulty accepting this myself. So I know that most other people are not going to understand what HSP is, and they're going to not even believe or understand what burnout is. They're going to have a difficult time understanding the legitimacy and the seriousness of what burnout is. They'll think, and I have been told numerous times, oh, you just need a vacation. She just needs a vacation. No. Unfortunately, a vacation is not going to restore the loss of energy and vitality. It takes so much more. Burnout feels like you have no energy to manage or to drive your own life because the work that you're doing at work is taking over every ounce of energy that you have to give. So I don't feel good about the fact that I had to leave my work because of this burnout, but I did make this choice for my own health. And it was a very difficult choice to make, and I did not make it suddenly. And it is hard to talk about. I know that I will probably be misunderstood when I do talk about it. I know that I will be misjudged as flawed, as weak, as overly sensitive, underperforming, overly dramatic, high maintenance, uptight, delicate. I can't handle work. I can't handle life and work like everyone else. I'm not good enough. I can't cut it while everyone else can and does. I mean, I know some of these are also the voices that I have going on in my mind trying to push those ideas onto me. But I also know that this runs across people's minds too. If I believed that being open about my state of burnout with work or family or friends would actually be helpful to me, I probably would have opened up about it then, but I don't, because I really don't believe that most people are capable of understanding this kind of thing, because that would require them to be genuinely caring about you and your well-being. And a lot of times, like, even though people do mean well, many of them aren't really concerned about your health because they're really just concerned about themselves at the workplace. And on top of it, if you have been mentioning to them or discussing to them issues about the workload and your capacity, and you're not being heard, you're really not going to be opening up to them about your state of burnout, what you're going through, especially too when they are modeling toxic work performance instead of healthy work habits. Sadly, the work environment can turn toxic, like in my case. So anyways, I've realized that no one is going to take care of your health except for you, and that you must be your biggest advocate. No one's going to genuinely care more about you than yourself. And I had to make the decision to put myself before my work for someone else. I'll tell you this, like, burnout is invisible for the most part. It's not like you're getting something concretely diagnosable, like say, I have gastrointestinal blah, 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 or, I suffered a stroke or something like that. Burnout isn't something physical, but it can very much manifest itself in physical symptoms. So for example, my sleep actually began to suffer, and I've never had any trouble sleeping in my life. And then also, like, once your sleep becomes inconsistent, it can really bring on a whole set of other health quandaries. So sleep is such a significant aspect of our well-being. And now that I'm entering the menopausal stage of life, and since well-being is a core value of mine, it really is my wholehearted intention to tend to this life stage in a conscious and most healthy kind of way possible. A long-time mantra of mine and a core principle of the healing work that I've always done is to feel good and be well. And it's really stood the test of time for me, and I want it to continue to be true. So burnout caused some menopausal symptoms to fast forward, and I began to experience like a hormone imbalance, leading me to have like hot flash-like sensations and sudden chills that would just like come out of nowhere. And I started to have headaches when I haven't experienced any headaches for like 15 years plus, literally. My vision was becoming blurred. My hair started to heavily shed. And honestly, I felt like it was all these menopausal symptoms that were being fully rushed in unnecessarily. In the back of my mind, I'm just thinking to myself, no, this is not how I want this stage of life to be. This is not how I want to experience this. Please, God, help me. And this is because I know that the changes that happen during this stage in our life do have a great impact on our health and our well-being. And it's so important for us to take the best care that we can, especially at this point in our lives, because if we intend to live well and we want to be able to work on purpose for the rest of our days, we really do need to feel good, and we really do need to be well. Before, where I felt motivated and energized about Monday mornings and the week ahead and everything I wanted to have happen and get done, I started to feel that dread that comes on Sundays. And I was even starting to feel that on like Saturday evenings. And there was also this low grade anxiety that was taking space in my body, like this constant hum of fluorescent lights, if you will. My brain would just sort of like shut down, like it just like hit a wall and would shut down, and I just couldn't get it to function as rapidly or clearly as usual. And this really made me feel worried about my health. I just started to feel bad that I'm like already getting into menopause, and from the start, and I'm barely getting there, and just boom, out the gates, this is all happening. I started to numb out, and having like regular drinks after work to help me get over the stress of like an exhausting day. And of course that didn't feel good to me, even though I was doing it, because I understood and understand this very unhealthy and potentially more so for women who are middle-aged. At work, there was never any break, never any rest. That workload just was always heavy, but it kind of kept on creeping up. And like my desire as a highly conscientious and admittingly overly responsible person, I started to, I wanted to stay on top of it all. I wanted to perform it without any issues. And that just didn't actually help me. The fact that I kept adapting myself didn't actually help me. There came a point in time where I attempted to make changes to this by discussing it with leadership. But despite this, nothing changed. Nothing changed to help me. Well, actually, one thing did change, and that was that I was made into the problem itself, because I brought up things that were inconvenient for leadership to address, which was like the inefficient workload and the unsustainable work pace. When I found the courage to voice these genuine concerns, I was made out to be difficult and challenging and essentially just a complainer. My manager and my colleague and my director, essentially, they triangulated against me and concluded that I was the problem. The environment became toxic. And to be honest, I began to feel like I'm a slave under oppressive leadership. It was like I was expected to adopt this slave mentality and accept that for myself, because that would be the only way that I would be able to continue to work. And more on that slave mentality in another vid. But I started to recognize that the work environment had become toxic. I also started at the same time to recognize that like all of my work, my contribution, my career highs, fruits of my labor, accomplishments that I felt proud that I had earned, all of it was now drying up, and it was pointing me to a dead end. Accepting the downturn of events, including my own limitations, that was very hard. It took about 6 months to face that as a reality. Part of my burnout did have to do with not being seen or heard. And, that was whether it was intentional or not. The message that I kept receiving was that I'm just not appreciated enough or important enough to be seen or to be heard. And that the only thing that really mattered was that I just kept on producing. The production kept going, and the work just would have to keep on being turned out with the expectation of yielding even higher productivity. The whole work all day, no natural flowing breaks, no natural spontaneous chats with others, really became an isolation of its own kind. I did manage to hold on to extracurricular work related to women's equality in our workplace. While leadership was trying to push that away from me or push me out of that, I did work extra hard so that I could continue to hold on to that activity because it was so life-giving to me. It really helped me out. And it gave me that extra endurance to just keep going. I am very proud of that. It was one of the most meaningful things that I did during my 6-year time there. The burnout made me feel very chronically exhausted, first physically, mentally and then emotionally. It did creep up rather quietly because I did keep adapting to the increased responsibility and workload. It slowly revealed itself to me, though, through the disharmony that I began to experience in my personal relationships. And in those relationships, I was showing signs of being like quick-tempered. I was irritable, I was impatient, I was intolerant, and sometimes that would show up as just straight anger. My relationship suffered, and I questioned whether we would be weathering the storm. But then, actually, thankfully, in a moment of clarity, thank you to my spiritual allies, I realized that I'd gone through something similar before. I thought, oh my gosh, wait a second. Am I crashing and burning? This feels very familiar to me. I think I'm experiencing burnout again. I was like, could I actually be experiencing this for a second time? See, the first time that I experienced burnout, it barely had a name, and that was like 8 or 9 years ago. So anyway, sitting with that, it kind of was a turning point. It wasn't a bold one. It did still take me time for me to accept that it was true because I didn't want it to be true. I didn't really want to believe that this could happen to me again, that I could go through this again. I had addressed it. I had healed from the last burnout experience that I had. So I didn't want this to be true. Experience, though, is a powerful teacher, right? It helped me to catch things, though, in time so that things didn't get so out of control. I do want to add that I did try to find other work while I was in my current work, but I couldn't handle the amount of energy and time that it took to find another job while working at a current job. And I also thought, gosh, how well am I right now to be able to determine for myself what would be a safe working environment, a working environment that isn't toxic, someplace that's good for me. Like my mind was I was so tired and exhausted, just mentally, physically, emotionally. Like, how could I make a good decision about my next place of employment? My confidence was, this was hard for me, but all of this did lead me to understand that one of the best things that I could do for myself was to leave on a high note, leave at a place where I could, it couldn't be worse, I knew things could get worse. And I thought, I'm going to leave here because I do still have some of my self-confidence and my dignity. So that would leave me on a high note. Even though my confidence was already starting to erode, I just didn't want it to be lost completely. The decision was hard for me, but especially because I had so much hope for my future at that workplace, even despite having an unsupportive manager. But I made the decision to leave. And I want to say that I could not have made that decision without these three things. Number one, God and my spiritual allies. Number two, my own innate self-motivation and self-determination. And number three, a guidance counselor. I'm currently healing and recovering from burnout for the second time. And I'm doing so much better. Okay, so I'm glad to report that I'm feeling a lot better. I'm still going though. And as a highly sensitive person who also identifies as an empath and a human design projector, I realize I'm very prone to burnout. This is something I know now. I'll be sharing more about this subject matter because I do believe that it needs a lot more awareness around it. So stay tuned for that. But right now, I really just want to take a moment to turn to you and to check in with you and ask you, have you experienced burnout? Are you potentially experiencing burnout now? Is someone close to you experiencing burnout? Well, I'd love to hear from you, some of your comments, your experiences with burnout. I'd love to build a community and a safe space around the subject of our well-being and the challenges to it that we face. For now, I want to thank you for listening to my story, and I want to thank you for sharing your comments, and thank you for being here. And until the next video, have a wonderful day and many blessings. Thank you.